For more than a century, a story has persisted about the skeletons of giants being found in Lovelock Cave in northern Nevada.
And for many years, human remains were put on display in museums here and elsewhere, but that changed. Most of the bones and skulls that were once considered to be historical artifacts have been returned to tribes for burial.
If oversized bones from the so-called Lovelock giants ever existed, they are no longer available to the public. But their story behind the legend still remains.
The I-Team's George Knapp has more.
Slicing through the bone-dry Humboldt Sink on a long dirt road, it's hard to imagine that all of this was once underwater. Remnants of a vast ancient lake can still be seen in the distance. For generations of first Americans, this was a lush paradise of tules, fish, and waterfowl. Humans have climbed this same narrow path up the jagged mountain for more than 4,000 years. That's how long indigenous peoples lived in and around the Lovelock Cave. The roof of the cave is still coated with soot from countless campfires lit by ancestors of the Paiutes. According to tribal lore, a race of red-headed giants made its last stand in this cave.
Well, among the Paiutes, would most of them say that the giants were real?
All that I've talked to say yes. I've never heard anybody say no.
Devoy Monk has spent all of her 80-plus years in Lovelock. Her family's home today houses a small museum, jam-packed with artifacts and depictions documenting centuries of native culture and pioneer life. Monk has earned the trust of Paiute elders who say the stories are true, that the red-headed interlopers not only killed but ate their ancestors.
My Indian friends tell me they were cannibals, that they set traps, and we have a paper in the other room, that they dug holes in the pathways and where they walked and then covered them, and then the Indians would fall in, and they said the best part to eat were the thighs.
On internet sites and alien-themed TV shows, the gruesome legend has blossomed, but it's hardly new. Versions have been told and retold in magazines, even scholarly journals, for more than a century. Famed Nevadan Sarah Winnemucca first wrote in her acclaimed book that the Paiutes waged a 3-year war against a tribe of red-headed cannibals before trapping and then killing the last of them inside Lovelock Cave. Her book doesn't mention giants, and mainstream archaeologists have vigorously rejected the entire story, to the point that the State Museum in Winnemucca admonishes visitors at its front entrance that the red-headed giants are a myth.
There have been skeletons pulled out in the Reed collection, and they found some in there, I believe, that were up to 6'2". So when you think about that, you know, even back then, 6 foot was a very tall individual.
Bill Snodgrass, the curator of the Marsden House Museum in Lovelock, thinks there is reasonable basis for parts of the story. In the early 20th century, guano miners began excavating the Lovelock Cave and uncovered thousands of artifacts, along with mummified remains, including a few specimens much taller than the typical Paiute of centuries past. Later, scientific excavations found troves of native antiquities, along with bones. Some human remains were destroyed. Others were sent to museums for display. A few, Snodgrass says, were consumed in bizarre initiation rituals. He adds there is evidence, including basketry, of an unknown culture that lived near the cave. Records show some of them had red hair.
So while I cannot say yes or no they were redheads or not, as, you know, there's even talk that it may have been uric acid changing the color of the hair during decomposition, but there was definitely a different people here.
Many, if not most, of the visitors who end up at the Marsden House Museum have questions about the red-headed cannibals. The locals still enjoy the debate.
The two of you disagree, but it's a friendly disagreement.
Oh, yes. Yeah, oh, yes.
Not everyone is so friendly about it. They get pretty passionate.
No. We've had this discussion. He hasn't convinced me, and I haven't convinced him.
George Knapp, 8 News Now.
Whether the red-headed giants ever existed, visits to the two museums are worth the drive up to Winnemucca and Lovelock. The Lovelock Cave is in Churchill County, off the beaten path, but not hard to find.
We do have links to both museums on our website, as well as articles, pro and con, about the Siteka. That is the name given to the cannibal tribe.